Hello, everyone. Cory Waggoner here with Higher Yields Consulting, the cannabis industry's favorite seed-to-scale consulting firm. Coming to you today with an important update about the cannabis industry in the state of Illinois. As you may already know, on January 7th, the state of Illinois passed down its application requirements for this round of craft cannabis cultivation, infuser, and transportation licenses. The state is going to be awarding 40 cultivation, 40 infusion, and an unlimited amount of transportation licenses. The state is going to begin accepting applications on February 14th, and applications can be submitted no later than March 16th. For those of you not in the know in regards to Illinois, the last round of dispensary applications ended on January 2nd, with nearly 4,000 total applications being submitted to compete for only 75 total permits. That means you would have needed to score in the top 2% to have a chance at winning a permit, actually the top 1.8% to win one of those. A lot of people ask us, why do people lose? The easiest answer is a lot of applicants submit weak applications or are not able to meet the deadline. Everyone has a different reason for why, but it really breaks down into 4 different areas. The first and most common reason is that they run out of time. They don't know how involved it's going to be. They don't understand the technology. They hit a traffic jam on their way to submit. These projects take a lot of time just to organize the final work product, and oftentimes that goes overlooked until you're in the 11th hour and it's too late. Another reason is that they don't understand the answer or answer the questions correctly. Some of the application questions are very specific and some are very vague. It can be very difficult to answer questions appropriately and also in a very focused, concise, yet detailed manner to manage your page counts. The next issue we often see is applicants underestimating the team and the resources required to be competitive. A big part of these applications is showing off your team and their experiences. And if applicants can't fill in all the gaps, it results in losing points. And then last but not least, we see a lot of lone rangers, those brave souls who thought they were going to take on the world by themselves and win. These applications are going to be 300 plus pages with varying exhibits from security, community engagement, finance, business plans. You need to have a lot of different subject matter experts on your team to be able to complete every exhibit properly. The key word, team. You have to have a team. You can't complete this application without one. So what does that mean for the next round? Mostly that it's going to be extremely competitive. Every point's going to count. Teams will win by a point. Teams will lose by a point. There's going to be a lot more losers than there will be winners. And while we expect far less applications this round than last in Illinois, those looking to apply should note that there will be almost 3,900 losing applications for the last round of dispensary permits. Lastly, don't do it alone. Our team has been through this process hundreds of times. You cannot submit a winning application by yourself, and you shouldn't try. It's expensive, it's stressful, and the outcome is never victory. In order to help those looking to apply for a permit, those looking to work in the industry, or those just looking to get a better understanding for the regulatory status of Illinois, our team at Higher Yields is putting on a complimentary webinar series about how to submit a competitive application for this round of craft cultivation, infusion, and transportation licenses. The webinar is going to be led by 2 of Higher Yields' most established and experienced compliance specialists, Shannon Bustos and Seelman. The webinar is going to be packed with important information covering an in-depth understanding of the Illinois cannabis industry, the application requirements, and the process for submitting. Shannon and Emily are going to take a deep dive into how to develop, enhance, and give you and your team the upper hand in submitting the most competitive application possible for this round of permits. These Q&A sessions will include some of the most educated and experienced cannabis professionals from the Higher Yields team and from around the industry. The industry pros attending will have specific expertise in operations, community engagement, social equity applicants, security, and any other section you and your team might need support with. During the Q&A session, these subject matter experts will field questions that attendees have regarding their application. It's a great opportunity to learn and improve your application. You do not want to miss this opportunity to gain that understanding. The webinar series is for your education is going to be stuffed full of important insight and valuable information from the world's most credible cannabis consulting firm and my company, Higher Yields Consulting. Our team combines for hundreds of successful state applications, and last year we worked with members of the federal government of Mexico to help draft the regulations and standards for both their cannabis and hemp programs. Higher Yields knows this industry inside and out, and if you come prepared for this webinar, you will get out of it what you put into it, so don't slack off on this one. You know, we also believe in a work hard, play hard mentality here at HYC, and this year we're going to be doing a lot of different events. Some digital events such as these webinars, podcasts, and QA sessions, but also some personal networking events for industry members looking to cut loose and have some fun. So stay tuned to our YouTube channel for announcements on the latest industry news, and also about some of our social consumption and networking events this year in Illinois, Colorado, California, and Nevada. And don't forget, when it comes to competitive application writing for these permits, you have to have a winner's mentality. Second place is simply the first loser in these battles for permits. So bring an extra pen, take great notes, and have your questions ready for the Q&A sessions. Good luck to all those applying, and don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Higher Yields Cannabis Consulting YouTube channel for important updates and additional information regarding the cannabis and hemp industry. Thank you, and have a great day.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining the Illinois Legal Adult Use Cannabis webinar. My name is Shannon Bustos, and I'm with Higher Yields Cannabis Consulting. So a quick overview, how did Illinois adult use cannabis really start? So the House Bill 1438 was passed, which is the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. It's the adult use cannabis was set to be legal for possession, recreational use, and purchase for anyone over the age of 21, January 1st, 2020 in Illinois. Reducing the impact of the war on drugs. So there's the social equity program, which we'll jump into here momentarily. There's been expungement for low-level cannabis convictions and over 11,000 pardons granted by Illinois' Governor Pritzker here to date. The standards for possession, if you're an Illinois resident and over the age of 21, you can hold 30 grams of cannabis flower, 5 grams of cannabis concentrate, no more than 500 milligrams of THC contained in a cannabis-infused product, which is your edibles, topicals. The possession limits for a non-Illinois resident over the age of 21, 15 grams of cannabis flower, 2.5 grams of cannabis concentrate, and no more than 250 milligrams of the THC contained in a cannabis-infused products. So let's talk about the potential in Illinois. So here, January 1st, 2020, an estimated 3.2 million worth of cannabis was sold versus Colorado, January 1st, 2014, a little over $1.1 million in sales. So the potential in Illinois is huge. There's a huge market. The Social Equity Program. So what is it? The Social Equity Program was created by the state of Illinois to encourage the participation of those who were negatively impacted by cannabis prohibition. If you meet the requirements to be a social equity applicant, you will receive an additional 200 points on your Illinois craft grower, infuser, or transporter license applications. Eligible for a reduction application fee up to 50%. Allows access to low interest loans for your cannabis business development. Social equity is huge on these applications. So the requirements that must be met to be a social equity applicant, one of the following criteria must be met. The applicant has at least 51% ownership and control by one or more individuals who have resided for at least 5 of the preceding 10 years in a designated disproportionately impacted area. Or number 2, have either been arrested, convicted, or adjudicated delinquent for an offense that is eligible for expungement under the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, or is a member of an impacted family. or the applicant has at least 10 full-time employees and at least 51% whom currently reside in a impacted area or have been arrested, convicted, or adjudicated delinquent for any offense that is eligible for expungement under the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, or as a member of an impacted family. Quick little pro tip, member of an impacted family. So what does that mean? It's an individual who has a parent, legal guardian, child, spouse, or dependent, or was a dependent of an individual who prior to the effective date of the act was arrested, convicted, or pronounced delinquent for any offense that is eligible for expungement under the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. So what are these offenses that are eligible for expungement? So under the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, it includes the possession of cannabis up to 500 grams or the manufacturing and delivery of up to 30 grams of cannabis. If you think that you live in an impacted area and you want to check, you can click on the link below to search your address. What's happening now? Illinois is set to award 75 adult use dispensary licenses by May of 2020. Beginning on February 14th, 2020, on Valentine's Day, the state will start accepting applications for craft grower, infuser, and transporter licenses. The deadline to turn your application in for one of these is March 16th, 2020. By July of 2020, 40 craft grower licenses, infuser licenses, and a number of transporter licenses will be awarded. The creator of these applications, so the Department of Professional and Financial Regulations, they produced the application for dispensaries. The Department of Agriculture is responsible for the craft grower, infuser, and transporter licenses. What do all these types mean? So let's jump into the next slide and we'll go through each of them. What exactly is a craft grower? A craft grower is a facility operated by a business that is licensed by the Department of Agriculture to cultivate, dry, cure, and package cannabis, as well as perform other activities to make cannabis available for sales in a dispensary or used for infused products. So initially, a craft grower facility may contain up to 5,000 square feet of cannabis canopy space. The Department of Agriculture can authorize that to be larger, so it can go up to 14,000 square feet. What exactly is an infuser? An infuser or infused organization is a facility that is licensed to incorporate cannabis or cannabis concentrate into a formulation to produce cannabis infused products. So your edibles, your topicals. What does it mean to be a transporter? A transporter is a business that is licensed by the Department of Agriculture, specifically to transport cannabis on behalf of a cannabis business establishment. Another pro tip, all license types may be co-located. So in other words, your dispensary, craft grow, and infuser licensees can all share the same premises as long as currency, cannabis, and cannabis infused products are stored in a separate secured vault. However, if common ownership of more than 50%, you can actually keep your cannabis stored, cannabis and currency stored in the same vault. So in conclusion, Illinois is already setting historic sale records, and the social equity program is set to expunge tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, cannabis-related criminal records. Thank you very much for joining our webinar. We appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. All of our information is down on the corner of the slide.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Higher Yields webinar on the Illinois Craft Grow, Infuser, and Transport application process. We wanted to give you an overview of each of these applications so that you can benefit on your journey in preparing these applications, or can get some more information on how to navigate the process or where to outsource and get a consulting team on your side. So we hope this is beneficial for you, and we can jump in right now. So, as the title kind of explains, there are three types of applications for cannabis operations in Illinois. The first is craft grow, the second is infuser, and the third is transport. As many of you know, the dispensary round for applications in Illinois just ended on January 2nd. So that was a 3-month process just about, and a lot of people experienced their first round of cannabis applications there and are now gearing up for either a craft grow, infuser, or transport application. And some people are going for all three. We actually recommend that people do try to go for all three because it is more business savvy in our opinions and our experiences to go for a vertical operation as opposed to a single operation or application for operations. Of course, if you have questions on that, you can certainly reach out to us at Higher Yields Consulting, and we would be happy to answer your questions in that realm. As many of you know, the dispensary round was led by the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. There were 75 licenses handed out. If you are watching this webinar at its launch, then you know many of us are anxiously awaiting the grading and release of the winners of the licenses for dispensaries. This round, there are 40 total awarded licenses being handed out for craft grow and 40 for infusion. There is an unlimited number of transportation licenses being handed out. But keep in mind that even though the state is handing out an unlimited number of transportation licenses, you still have to grade above a 75% in order to pass. And once you do that, you can earn a license for transport. Similarly, the state is requiring a minimum grade of 75% for a craft grow application and an infuser application. That means you have to score at least 75% to even be in the running. But from there, it doesn't end. You're actually going up against a number of competitors because we all know that the amount of individuals and teams applying go beyond 40 licenses. That means you have to get above a 75% and then be very competitive beyond that. What the 75% grading scale does, it allows the state to not have to hand out 40 licenses if it doesn't believe that there are 40 qualified teams able to earn a craft grow license or an infuser license. So when you're thinking about how to navigate the application process and a consulting team to choose, you should look at it like this. Forget the 75% and think about who your competition is. You're going to go up against maybe thousands of people for a very limited number of licenses, which means your application can very well come down to 1 or 2 points difference. And in fact, we did see this in the dispensary application round when the state announced that on the final day of application submission, there were 700 people that applied for applications, and they submitted over 4,000 applications, and that's for 75 licenses. So keep that in mind when you're considering the competitiveness of this round. Not only is this round far more competitive, but the applications themselves are a lot more advanced than a dispensary. You're talking about very technical and stringent requirements to meet when you're building out a craft grow and infuser application. So just to let everybody know, to keep it on your calendar, the beginning of acceptance for the applications is actually Valentine's Day. So February 14th, you can begin submitting your application and then wipe your hands of it, or you can work all the way up until the last day of the deadline, which is March 16th. So we always suggest that our clients utilize as much time as possible when building up their teams and strategizing on how to build the best application. And we work with our clients. So we generally suggest that our clients submit after the first day of acceptance, but well before the last day of acceptance for applications. This is because clients generally don't understand what is involved to do the non-narrative pieces, filling out the forms, getting everything compiled, getting to the actual location of submission. You just never know the types of things that can pop up. Health-wise, family-wise, you just don't know. So we never suggest filing on that last day of acceptance if you can help it. So let's jump into the actual applications themselves. The first application we will go through is craft grow. And we just wanted to throw the definition up here for you just so you can get an understanding, because there is a little bit of a difference between a craft grow license and a cultivation license. A craft grow is a facility that's operated by a business that's licensed by the Department of Agriculture to cultivate, dry, cure, and package cannabis, as well as perform other necessary activities to make cannabis available for sale at a dispensary or for use at an infusion organization. Initially, a craft grower facility may contain only up to 5,000 square feet of cannabis canopy space on the premises for plants in the flowering stage. However, the Department of Agriculture may authorize an increase or decrease in the cultivation space in increments of 3,000 square feet by roll up to 14,000 feet based on market need, craft grow capacity, and the licensee's history of compliance or noncompliance. This portion or this application itself is 1,000 points, which is a little bit different than the dispensary application. So keep that in mind as you're drafting these narrative pieces. A few of the things that stand out in the craft grow application process is that the applicants are limited to 5,000 square feet of canopy space. That means you want to partner with an operator who has the knowledge on how to build a really strong craft grow center that can allow you to have the highest yield possible. And then you also want to be able to build into your application that you are capable of quickly and efficiently increasing your canopy space if the state permits that you can increase by 3,000 square feet up to 14,000 square feet. So if you're limited there, or if you have a building that's limited in size, then you want to be able to speak to how you'll still be able to increase your yield and increase your canopy space based on modifications to the regulations. That's a really big piece that I think a lot of people might look over and miss. But I think those are crucial points that you want to make sure that you utilize in your application so that you can stand out a little bit more. We help our clients a lot of times in building out the technical language to be able to convey this to the state, to show the state that you are capable of performing in a 5,000 square foot canopy space within your facility, and then how to build out efficiently in instances of increase of canopy space by the department. So that is something we excel in. We love to build this for our clients. And of course, the second piece that really stands out in this definition is that you want to have a history of compliance in actually cultivating marijuana, which means you need people on your team who are operators in this space already. Okay, here's the breakdown of the craft grow application. There are 10 narrative exhibits and then 10 non-narrative requirements that you need to complete. So this is a really nice way to break it up at a high level right from the beginning. The 10 non-narrative requirements, these are pieces that will get you extra points, or they're pass or fail. You need to complete these unless they're optional, or you will be disqualified. For instance, there's a general information page in the application. It's just your background information, who the point of contact is, how you get in contact with that person. Is there a secondary contact available? And your company's information. So again, if you don't complete those, you'll either get a deficiency letter from the state, or you could get disqualified right off the bat. So we always recommend our clients really take care in preparing their non-narrative requirements so that they can put forth the best application possible. We're preparing their narrative exhibits. They're putting together some of the general information pieces, and together it creates one of the best standout applications that we can put forth for the state. So some other non-narrative requirements is your status as a social equity applicant, your Illinois residency, your veteran status, your property status, you notice of proper zoning, your organizational information and financial interest disclosure, principal officer forms, notarization forms, and fingerprint consent form. So when you see these 10 non-narrative requirements, if you applied for the dispensary round, you will notice that there's a lot of overlap. There are a few key pieces, though, that are distinguishable from the dispensary round. The first is the property status. Unlike the dispensary round, you need to have a piece of property solidified. You either need to lease it, own it, or get engaged with the property owner so that there's some sort of hold letter in place that will allow you to lease or purchase that property should you win a permit. That's a little bit different than the dispensary round where it wasn't a requirement. The other thing you'll notice is the notice of proper zoning. This is also different than the dispensary round. Here, you will need to get a notice of proper zoning filled out by someone on your team, as well as the zoning committee in your area, that shows the state that the area that you are leasing, owning, or having a hold letter prepared for is actually properly zoned to operate a craft grow operation. One of the things that's the same between the dispensary application and this application is the proof of status as a social equity applicant. This is interesting because I don't think many people realized how important this would be. It was an optional piece in the last round. It's an optional piece in this round, except in this round, we have hindsight to benefit us. We found that through the state's news release that 600 out of 700 applicants were social equity applicants for dispensaries. There's a point number associated to being a social equity applicant. So that means 100 applicants for dispensaries were down by 50 points right off the bat when they applied for a dispensary. So here we know that it's of vital importance to be a social equity applicant or have someone on your team that is a social equity applicant when you apply. The state is not grading these in sections. They're not grading social equity applicants in one silo and non-social equity in another. They are grading them all on the same plane. So we believe it is very important to bring someone on your team or build your team around a social equity piece. Not only is this beneficial for points, but it's exactly what the spirit of the law of Illinois was meant to do. Illinois wants to see opportunities to be had by social equity applicants or social equity individuals who otherwise wouldn't be able to enter into this market or this space due to prior cannabis laws or their location where they've lived in a disproportionately impacted area and finances. So this is a great opportunity to actually provide some real life-changing opportunities for people. We highly suggest this. Next, you'll see the 10 narrative exhibits. There's a lot of overlap in title from the dispensary round to this round, but there are some distinguishing features within each of these exhibits that we'll speak on a little bit more here in a minute. The 10 narrative exhibits are the proposed facility, the suitability of this facility, the suitability of your employee training plan, your security plan and record keeping plan, cultivation plan, product safety and labeling, business plan and services to be offered, labor and employment practices, environmental plan, diversity plan, and a bonus section for community engagement. The other application we have up on the menu here is the infuser application. An infuser is a facility that's licensed by the Department of Agriculture to directly incorporate cannabis or cannabis concentrate into a formulation to produce a cannabis infused product. Again, this application is also 1,000 points. Similar to the craft grow application, the infuser application has 10 narrative exhibits and 10 non-narrative requirements to complete. Similar to the craft grow, it also has a social equity piece. You also have to have property and proper zoning, and of course the other non-narrative requirements. Like the craft grow narrative exhibits, you also have to show the suitability of your proposed facility, suitability of your employee training plan, your security plan and record keeping, infusing plan, your product safety and labeling plan, your business plan and services to be offered, labor and employment practices, environmental plan, diversity plan, and again, the bonus section for community engagement. Finally, we have the transport application. Again, if you score 75% or higher, you will be able to obtain a transport license. Beyond scoring a 75% or higher, keep in mind, you still have to pass background checks. You still have to have a quality team. And in order to pass the 75% or higher, you will have narrative exhibits to complete and the non-narrative exhibits to complete, which we'll look at on the next slide. But for a definition, a transporter is a business that's licensed by the Department of Agriculture specifically to transport cannabis on behalf of a cannabis business establishment. It can also be a community college licensed under the Community College Cannabis Vocational Training Pilot Program. This application is also 1,000 points. The transport application breakdown is similar in the non-narrative requirements as it is to the craft grow and infusion applications. So you've got the general information page, social equity applicant, Illinois residency, veteran status, property status and zoning, financial interest, principal officer and board member disclosures, your notarization form, and your fingerprint consent form. Here, however, and this is a nice little distinguishing factor from the craft grow and infuser plans, you only have 7 narrative exhibits to complete. There is a bit of an overlap between some of these exhibits and the other applications, and a few distinguishing features within the narratives themselves. Here we've got the business plan, the employee training plan, your security plan and record keeping, labor and employment practices, environmental plan, diversity, and a bonus section for community engagement. Okay, so now I want to jump into some of the actual meat of the application requirements. The first is your suitability of proposed facility. This is Exhibit A on both the craft grow and the infuser application. Here are some details, and I wanted to lay them out side by side because there's a lot of overlap, but there is still a little bit of distinction between the two. The first is your ability to demonstrate that your facility is suitable for effective and safe cultivation of cannabis. That's for your craft grow application. For infuser, you're doing the same thing, but you're demonstrating that your facility is suitable for the production of cannabis and cannabis infused products. So these are largely the same, but we just want to point out the distinguishing features. You can't just pull over what you write for a craft grow and drop it into an infusion plan. That would be a huge mistake, and you would ultimately, in my opinion, right off the bat, lose an application or not obtain a license, because this is a very important piece of the application. Number two is your demonstration of the ability to meet consumer demand by operating your craft grow facility in a safe and efficient manner with minimal impact on the environment and the surrounding community. Similar to the craft grow, infuser is asking for the same thing, but in your infuser facility. And third, for both craft grow and infuser, you will need to provide an operations and management practices plan. This exhibit is a 50-page limit for both infuser and craft grow, so 50 pages each and 75 points total. The second exhibit is your employee training plan, or the suitability of your employee training plan. This is a 50-point exhibit. There are 15 pages that you can work with for this exhibit, and you also get to add a proposed employee handbook. We always suggest that these employee handbooks are reviewed by an attorney, because what you submit to the state is what you need to actually implement in your facilities. There are two pieces to the employee training plan. First is your ability to describe your staffing plan so that you can ensure adequate staffing and experience for accessible business hours, safe production, sanitation, security, and theft prevention. This is a little bit different with transport, so I wanted to point that out. Your staffing plan will ensure that staffing meets the experience and security needs of operating a transportation organization. So there's a little bit of a nuance there when building out subsection 1 of your employee training plan for a transport license as opposed to your craft grow or infuser licenses. Subsection number 2 is your ability to provide an employee handbook that will provide employees with a working guide of the administration and policies of the facilities. If you apply for a dispensary permit, you will know that your security exhibit was different than your inventory and record keeping plan exhibit. When building out your infuser plan or craft grow application for the Department of Agriculture, you'll see that the state merged these two exhibits into one. However, it is still vital to build out both of these exhibits and both of these features of this exhibit just the same as you did for a dispensary plan. So there's a 65-page limit here. It's 145 points. And this exhibit is going to ask for your ability to prevent theft and diversion of cannabis and cannabis-infused products, and how your plan will assist the ISP, department, and local law enforcement in carrying out law enforcement responsibilities. Keep note of the actual regulations that the state points to in this subsection, and make sure you speak to those requirements as well. As you'll see in parentheses here, there are some overlapping types of regulations for the infuser, but they are located in a different part of the regulations or the emergency rules. In subsection number 2, you will demonstrate that your plan for record keeping, tracking, and monitoring inventory, quality control, and security, and other policies and procedures will discourage unlawful activity, including a description of the applicant's plan to coordinate with and dispose of unused and surplus cannabis. So there's a lot of pieces there, but remember, whatever you build out for your record keeping plan and your inventory monitoring plan, you want to always go back to how does this build into your security plan. There are 2 additional pieces for your craft grow and infuser plans. So for transportation, you've got subsections 1 and 2. For craft grow and infuser, you've also got subsections 3 and 4. For subsection number 3, you're going to describe the secured, locked facility where you store your cannabis and cannabis-infused products. You're also going to include the measures for when your location is closed for business and the steps you take to ensure the cannabis is never visible to the public. And for number 4, you're going to provide your plan to apply for a transportation license or your plan to work with a licensed transporter. And of course, all the procedures of securely delivering cannabis products to the business establishments. So here, we always suggest for our clients that they actually apply for a transporter license themselves, because it can help build into your security plan when you've got all of these things in-house. It's all under your same security personnel. It's all under your camera system. It's all streamlined. It's a lot more efficient. And there's a lot more clarity and less chance for breaks in the chain of custody. So the next exhibit we have is the cultivation plan and infusion plan. Your cultivation plan and infuser plan will overlap largely, but it's important to remember you cannot just copy and paste a cultivation plan over to an infuser plan. We see a lot of people come to us, especially in the 11th hour, asking us to help them with review or narrative preparation, and we see that they have gone way too far in the process in just copying and pasting information. That is not what the state wants to see. We very strongly believe that you build these out with specificity to the actual operation you will be building, and make sure it is technically written, it meets all of the regulations and all the specs, but it also stands out. And that can be a hefty undertaking for individuals who are not familiar with how an infuser application is written or a cultivation application is written, and for people who are not familiar with how any of these operations are run. It is vital for you to partner with people who know what they're doing when they prepare an application, because you're putting your time, your energy, your money, your resources into this application. And that is why we take on these clients, so that we can build these applications to be the best that they can be, so they can submit the best application possible for their facilities. For your cultivation plan, you're going to want to describe your plan to provide a steady and uninterrupted supply of cannabis to registered dispensaries, similar to the infusion plan, which is where you're going to provide a steady and uninterrupted supply of cannabis infused products to dispensaries. There's a lot of overlap between these two plans, but you want to be specific to the product you're producing. The second bullet point is the demonstration of knowledge of cultivation methods. Here is where you want to be very specific to your quality of team. Do you have an operator that you partner with that has actual cultivation experience or infuser experience? If you don't, we believe this is a distinguishing factor between winning and non-winning applications. You want to have people on your team who can bring that level of experience that you may not have on your team. The third is the demonstration of the steps that you will take to ensure the quality of cannabis, including the purity and consistency of the cannabis products that you will be providing for dispensaries. Just like the cultivation plan, the infuser plan is the same thing, but it's specific to your cannabis infused products. Your transportation business plan is a little bit different. This is where you're going to demonstrate that your proposed vehicles are suitable for the effective and safe transportation of the products. You're also going to demonstrate your ability to meet consumer demand through your transporting services. And finally, you're going to describe your plan to provide and ensure adequate staffing and experience. Here's where you'll want to really focus in your employment plan on your ability to lead in the hiring of minorities, women, veterans, people with disabilities, and other groups that may be disadvantaged in this area. You'll want to engage in fair labor practices and provide worker protections. There's going to be a little bit of overlap here, I think, in what you prepare for this subsection into what you prepare for your labor and employment practices for your cultivation and infusion plans. And it's really nice if you can overlap these in a nice way when you apply for all three together and go for a vertical license. This is a 75-point section and a 50-page limit. Next, you're going to have your product safety and labeling plan. Here's where you'll describe your plan for safe and accurate packaging and labeling. You're going to describe your plan for testing cannabis and ensuring that it's free of contaminants. And you're going to establish a plan for product recall and how you identify a product that may be a part of that recall. This is a very important piece, and it's important for the state to understand that you know how to handle any instances that could come up for the safety of cannabis users. This is a 95-point section and a 55-page limit. Next, you're going to have your business plan and services to be offered. This is similar to the transport business plan that we have on the previous slide here. So here you're going to provide your plan to describe how your craft grow or infuser operation plan is going to work on a long-term basis. You're going to have a detailed description of the amount and source of the equity and debt commitment and your financial feasibility. Here is where you're going to want to do market research on the cannabis industry. And you may want to partner with a CPA firm that is knowledgeable in the cannabis space, so you can really speak to your ability to financially operate these facilities. Next, you're going to provide a timetable that shows the time from when you win a permit to the time you will be fully operational, and give the state confidence that you actually know how you're going to lay this facility out and become operational in the right amount of time and be able to provide quality cannabis to the people of Illinois. Third, you're going to demonstrate and describe your experience that your officers, your board members have in the industry. Again, like I spoke to on a prior slide, this is another area where you really want to speak to your experience here. Not only parallel industry experience outside of the cannabis industry, but also actual legal industry experience. It is vital to partner with an operator who is experienced in this space. Of course, you can always reach out to us at Higher Yields Consulting if you need help finding an operator to partner with, or you need help building these specific exhibits. This exhibit is 110 points and 60 pages. Next, we've got the labor and employment plan. As mentioned in an earlier slide, you're going to want to show your desire to bring in people from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, all races, genders, everything that you can to actually add value to the people of Illinois and through this sector. There's 3 subsections to this plan. You're going to describe your plan to provide a steady, uninterrupted supply of cannabis to registered dispensaries. 2, you're going to demonstrate your knowledge of cultivation methods to be used, including various strains to be cultivated and your experience with growing those strains. And 3, demonstrate the steps that will be taken to ensure the quality of cannabis, including the purity and consistency of the cannabis to be provided for dispensaries. Next, we've got the environmental plan, and that's your plan to provide or demonstrate your ability to minimize the carbon footprint, environmental impact, and resource needs for the production of cannabis or cannabis-infused products if you're an infuser. For transport, you're going to provide your plan to use hybrid or electric zero-emission vehicles. And for all 3 applications, you're going to want to describe any plans you have for the use of alternative energy, treatment of wastewater and runoff, and treatment of exchanged air. This is a 20-point exhibit and a 10-page limit. Next, we have the diversity plan, which is limited to 2,500 words. It is a 100-point total plan. Here, you're going to provide the narrative that establishes your goal of diversity in ownership, management, employment, and contracting to ensure that diverse participants and groups are afforded equality of opportunity. You'll see a little bit of an overlap here between what you write in your engagement in hiring diverse people groups in what you put in your other exhibits. But that's a really nice overlap that you can really draw and pull that thread of diversity and social equity opportunities throughout your application. And the final narrative exhibit is the bonus section, Community Engagement Plan. This is a total of 2 points per category, 3 categories, and a 10-page limit per category. So to break that down, there are 3 opportunities to stand out from other applications: your community benefits plan, your substance abuse prevention plan, and your local community neighborhood report. We highly suggest preparing narratives for all 3 of these categories and utilize these 10 pages per category to really speak to your initiatives to engage in the community. Again, this is not a requirement, but we do suggest that you implement these strategies and prepare this plan, because in the event of a tie, the department can award up to 2 bonus points for preferred but not required initiatives in those 3 categories. You must state the category or categories to which you have prepared a response. Each category and its corresponding response must be clearly labeled. I point those 2 sentences out because there are applicants that will draft their narratives but not make the distinction between their thoughts. Here, it is very important to make the distinction between these 3 categories. And first, right off the bat, state all 3 categories if you're preparing a response for all 3 categories. For transport, it's a little bit different. Instead of a community benefits plan, substance abuse prevention plan, and local community and neighborhood report, you will prepare a proposal that outlines your plan to engage within your community by the establishment of an incubator program designed to increase participation in the cannabis industry by persons who qualify as social equity. Second, you can offer a proposal outlining your plan to provide financial assistance to substance abuse treatment centers. And third, your plan to educate children and teens about the potential harms of cannabis use. Okay, let's jump into an important piece of the application. Again, this is something we pointed out in the beginning here that is not a requirement, but is definitely something you need to consider when you are applying. In the last round, social equity applicants received a bonus of 5 points. Right off the bat, they received 5 points. Here, they're going to receive 200 points. Now, the scoring is a little bit different. In dispensary round, the scoring was up to 250 points. So you had an opportunity for 50 out of 250 points to be allocated to you because you are a social equity applicant. Here, you're going to get 200 out of 1,000 points if you are a social equity applicant. Again, based on the results of the dispensary round, having 600 out of 700 applicants being social equity individuals or teams, we highly suggest that you engage with a social equity individual, provide them with a very real and meaningful opportunity, gauge their interest in getting into the cannabis space, and provide them a meaningful existence here in this sector. This is a great way to not only gain these points, but to actually impact the cannabis community and the people of Illinois. So there are a couple steps that you need to know in order to apply as a social equity individual. First, you're going to want to provide your evidence as a status as an Illinois resident. So there's different ways to do this, and they're outlined below. I won't go through all of the details here. This is also outlined in the application itself and in the regulations. But essentially, you're providing documentation to show that you've been an Illinois resident for at least 30 days. Once you meet this prong of the requirements, you also have 4 opportunities to meet the second prong. The first 2 is that you want to provide that you are a person or you own and control 51%. The second prong is evidence of the person or persons owning and controlling more than 51% of the entity has lived in a disproportionately impacted area for 5 out of the preceding 10 years. Again, you're going to show that through evidentiary information such as documentation of mortgages, voter registration, leases, tax records, things like that. Keep in mind here, there's a few things to understand. You do not get to decide if you've lived in a disproportionately impacted area. That is something that is considered through the state. So they have determined areas in the state that are disproportionately impacted. You can go online to the Illinois website and you can find a map and type in your address to get as specific as possible and see if your area falls into the blue shaded areas on the map. If it does, you live in a disproportionately impacted area. If you don't live there anymore, but you live there for 5 out of the preceding 10 years, and you can demonstrate that by those documentation, you can meet this step. If you meet this step plus the first step as an Illinois resident, then you are a social equity applicant. Another way to be a social equity applicant is to first, again, be the Illinois resident, and then show evidence that the person owning and controlling more than 51% of the proposed entity has been arrested for, convicted of, adjudicated delinquent for any offense made eligible for expungement by this act, Public Act 101-0027. In this instance, an arrest, a conviction, or adjudication that has been sealed or expunged can also be provided through records of that action. If you qualify, you are a social equity applicant. There are 2 more ways that you can be a social equity applicant. The first is that the person owning and controlling more than 51% has a parent, a legal guardian, a child, a spouse, a dependent, or was a dependent of an individual who, prior to June 25th, 2019, was arrested for, convicted of, or adjudicated delinquent for any offense made eligible for expungement by that Public Act 101-0027. So it's similar to the previous one, except you don't have to be the individual. It can be one of your parents, a guardian, a child, a spouse, or a dependent. The final way you can be a social equity applicant is, again, going back to being an Illinois resident plus having employed 10 or more full-time employees and providing evidence that 51% or more of those employees currently reside in the disproportionately impacted area or have been arrested under the act or has a family member that's been arrested under the act. So, as you can see, that's kind of a conglomeration of the other prongs, but it allows you to actually hire people. A caveat to this is that you have to show that these employees are engaging in full-time work as of the date the application is submitted. So here are some risks of rejection. You miss a deadline. We see it happen all too often. People underestimate the volume of work they have to do and the amount of work that's required to complete an application, and they do completely miss a deadline. They're not eligible. They may be under the age that they're supposed to be. They may have a background that won't allow them to pass. They may have they may have their hand in too many operations in Illinois. So there's a lot of ways that you can actually become ineligible to apply in this round. So we highly suggest checking the regulations or calling a consultant to see if you are capable of applying. So beyond there, so without boring you and reading all of the bullet points here, the biggest thing we want to point out is that if you provide inadequate answers, you will not win. And a lot of people enter into this and think that they can prepare a well-done application. And I believe people can do that. But it is a big project. It's a behemoth application. And we highly suggest partnering with a consultant because these are highly technical pieces. They are stringent requirements. They're heavily regulated. And what you commit to in your application, you do have to abide by if you do win a permit. So to close out this webinar, here are the top 5 items you should consider when applying for a craft grow or infuser license. First, you need to provide evidence of the lease, property ownership, or a written statement from the property owner that the property is being held through December 31st, 2021, should you win a permit. Second, will you be able to get your zoning approved? You may have the property, but if you don't have the zoning, you still will not win. Exhibit N requires a form to be completed by you and the local zoning authority or local government that indicates you are in compliance with currently enacted local zoning laws and regulations, or that you've applied for local zoning approval, or that the area has no applicable currently enacted zoning regulations. This round is 1 month shorter than the previous dispensary round. We believe this is so important to get your property underway and get the zoning approved as soon as possible. The final 3 items you should consider when applying for a craft grow or infuser license is, what does your team look like? Do they have the experience you need to show that they are legally operating or managing a cannabis facility, specifically manufacturing or cultivation, that can really impress the state? Do you have the finances? Not only are you applying for a fee, but you also have an annual license fee. If you win a permit, you have to pay $40,000 to the state for a craft grow, $10,000 for transportation, $5,000 for infuser. There is a 50% reduction for qualifying social equity applicants. Keep in mind, you may be a social equity applicant, but if your team has finances that go beyond a certain monetary threshold, you will not qualify for monetary reductions in your licenses. And of course, consider the cost to build out and operate these facilities. You have to consider that there is a cost associated to all of this. But if you do it well, you partner with a consulting company that can help you meet your audits, build in an economical way, an environmentally friendly way, and of course, a cost-efficient way, you should be well on your way to actually operating one of the best facilities in Illinois. And we strongly believe that with the right partnerships, you can definitely do it. And of course, and finally, are you applying as a social equity applicant? I know I mentioned this a few times, but I feel like hitting it one more time for you. 20% of the points are allocated to social equity applicants. And if we learn anything from the dispensary round, it is important for you to be a social equity applicant if you are applying. And again, it provides a great opportunity for individuals who want to get into this space, but may not know how to do it or may not have the finances to start it. But they can bring you the manpower, the operations, and the desire to enter into this space. You're going to be able to provide a real opportunity for people, and that's exactly what Illinois wants to see. Thank you all so much for your time. I hope this was beneficial for you. And of course, feel free to reach out to us at Higher Yields Consulting if you have any questions. Thank you.